Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're going to let people take a couple minutes and enter the room before we start this event. So actually, we're just going to take like 30 seconds. So bear with us here as folks get logged in. Thank you. Awesome. I see some familiar names in our audience today and some new ones as well, which is very exciting. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Welcome to our 2021 EV Outlook and Virtual Happy Hour webinar. My name is Jo Olson. I'm the Senior Communications and Engagement Manager at Fresh Energy. And today's event is co-hosted between Fresh Energy and Shift2Electric. We have a ton to talk about today, but first, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. We will have a very robust Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but I encourage you, whenever you think of a question or a comment, submit it right when you think of it. So use the Q&A function in Zoom. There's like a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you use that, you can actually see the questions that other people submit, and if you give them a thumbs up, it will upvote them, and those questions will rise to the top. So I'll have a great list to start out with when we get going. So, like I said, lots to cover today. We'll be discussing what's happening for electric vehicles and EV infrastructure at the federal level, especially in the American Jobs Plan, and we have a guest surprise speaker for that part of this event. We'll also talk about market developments and what's happening for EVs here in Minnesota, in addition to what is hot in the marketplace right now. We'll also have an obligatory conversation about Clean Cars Minnesota, because that is the issue that just keeps on giving. And then we'll get to the Q&A. So we're going to move over here, changing slides, to our speakers. Again, I am Jo Olson. I also want to welcome Jukka Kukkonen, who is probably on your screen. Hi, Jukka. Thank you. He's the Chief EV Educator for Shift2Electric, and he's the EV consultant with Fresh Energy. We are also joined by Anjali Bains, my colleague, who, bless her, joined us about 12 hours with 12 hours notice. So she's here just to give us a quick scoop on the American Jobs Plan, because I didn't want to miss us talking about that and what it means for EVs and EV infrastructure. So Anjali is the Senior Clean Transportation Manager on the Energy Transition Team at Fresh Energy. All right, next slide. Anjali, on to you, and I'm going to spotlight your video so people can see you as you're talking.
Great, thank you so much, Jo. Yes, exciting news came out of the Biden-Harris administration. I think it was officially last day of March, early April, and that was a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan titled America's Jobs Plan. And in the past, infrastructure plans have really focused on things that we've thought of as infrastructure in the public imagination, things like roadways and ports and bridges. And the really incredible thing about this, besides being really big, multi-trillion, I think it's about $2.7 trillion, is that it also expanded the notion of what infrastructure could cover. And in our cases, really excitingly, it had multiple references to and goals around electric vehicles and getting America ready for the transition to electric vehicles. And that is what we're going to go dig into here. Next slide, Jo. Great. So there's a lot to celebrate about the American Jobs Plan. Sorry. The first is that there were actually quantitative goals set, and it wasn't just about electric vehicle charging stations, which might resonate more under the term of infrastructure. It actually hit a lot of different areas. The first is that there is $174 billion denoted as investments in electric vehicles, which is really specific and indicates there's an underlying breakdown of actual investments that the Biden administration is planning for. Of course, there was a 500,000 new chargers by 2030 promise, which was actually I think it was a campaign promise that the Biden administration said, or at least was an early part of their announcement after they transitioned to the current administration. They also talked about replacing diesel buses with electric buses, 50,000 new electric transit buses, and aiming for at least 20% of our school buses to be electric as well, with the end goal of electrifying 100% of school buses. So these are really, really important just in both the sheer amount of dollars invested, again, $174 billion, but also the many different levers they touch about electric vehicles, which is buses, transit and school buses, charging stations, and overall investments. The second really great thing to see is that the plans in multiple places talked about the need to expand access to and affordability of electric vehicles. And they did this in a few places, most notably when they're talking about the rebates. The federal government to date has had tax incentives, which they hope to continue under the American Jobs Plan, but they also wanted to expand that to include what's called point of sale rebates. And these are really rebates that are on the hood, meaning that they're taken off the sticker price of a vehicle when it's being purchased, which means that someone doesn't have to pay more upfront and then rely on getting a tax credit in order to bring down the cost of their vehicle. So this is really important when we think about making sure that electric vehicles and these sort of rebates are not only enjoyed and accessible to all income levels, but particularly the lower income levels who might just not have the high tax burden that would make the federal tax incentive fully worth it. In addition, as I mentioned, they weren't just focused on electric vehicles, they're also focused on buses, especially transit buses and school buses. And that's really key because it shows that they're also aware that not everyone wants to or can be traveling around in a single occupancy passenger vehicle, that there is a need to electrify and update our transit systems. So again, a really, really key point for that access and affordability portion. And finally, something that's really, really great to see is that they're not just focusing on the vehicles or the charging infrastructure, which we can really consider as an end use portion of electric vehicles. The Biden administration in this plan really wanted to bring in the entire life cycle. That means making sure that there is a domestic supply chain set up, both to mine batteries, minerals, as well as to actually make the electric vehicles in the country. And this not only will mean that there is a prospect of growing the domestic manufacturing industry and bringing more jobs around EVs to the US, it's really important in terms of making sure that America can actually meet its climate goals, and that risks around security elsewhere or supply chains that are coming from international countries, that if those are disrupted, that means our path towards net zero emissions doesn't have to be interrupted or set back. We see that actually happening right now with the semiconductor supply chain disruption. There are issues in production in a lot of American car makers because they're not able to get the parts and materials they need to finish making their cars because they're so digital in this day and age. And this plan actually called that out and says we need to have a robust, resilient supply chain so we can meet our goals and not have to be subject to these risks. Of course, this plan is really high level. There's a lot of details. I mentioned a lot of parts of electric vehicles that we liked. It's only one portion of the transportation system, on-road passenger vehicles. There's a lot more to the transportation system that we hope to see the Biden administration address in future plans. And there is limited details, just it being, again, a lot of information in one plan, limited details on what sort of labor and sustainability standards the Biden administration would enforce when it comes to things like domestic EV manufacturing or battery mining and extraction. Next steps is for the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate to propose their own versions of infrastructure bills. We've heard that the U.S. House of Representatives are trying to do this by middle of the summer before July 4th recess, and we're still waiting to see if the U.S. Senate comes out with their version of a timeline. And with that, I will stop the federal updates. Again, very exciting, a lot of exciting things happening around electric vehicles, especially under the new administration. And I will hand it back to Joe and Jukka to talk about the rest of what's happening in the EV space.
Thank you, Anjali. I really, really appreciate that from you. I have a feeling you're going to be talking about federal stuff from the White House and Congress a lot in in the coming months and throughout the summer. So, all right, I think we're going to let you go for the night. Thank you so much for taking time for us. And Jukka, if you're ready, you can share your screen and take it from here.
I thought I already did.
I think you are
Because,
actually.
okay, excellent. That's good. Then we are fine here. Good afternoon or almost good evening, everyone here. We're still in a happy hour, so I think it's afternoon then. My name is Jukka Kukkonen, and I'm really happy to continue from here. Thanks, Joe, for opening up for us here, and thanks, Anjali, for joining us and providing all the information from American Jobs Plan. That's really important when we think about the future. So we're talking about EV Outlook 2021, and I hope many of you were able to join us. Was it 3 months ago when we did this last time, Joe? Something like that?
I think it was January.
It was January, yeah.
Yeah.
So we might
Different
do this
world.
quarterly. We'll see. But things keep changing, so who knows? Maybe we'll start to do this monthly if this just picks up. But I'll start by talking about the market, and then I go into the vehicles and what we have seen, what has happened in the market in general, then what has happened in Minnesota, and what are we seeing with the EVs that are coming to the market. So starting with the EV market developments, if you look at the EV sales in US and Europe, we used to be pretty close to Europe in the past years on our EV sales numbers, and then 2020 happened. And I'm not talking about the COVID here. That has nothing to do with what happened here. Really, European EV sales just accelerated really fast last year, and that's because they put a robust structure together where they kind of said that, okay, other manufacturers, if you want to sell cars in Europe, you have to meet fleet standard of 95 grams per kilometer CO2 emissions, and that meant that everybody actually had to bring EVs to the market. And when they brought the EVs to the market, surprise, surprise, people actually loved it, and they started to sell really well, and this continues. So I'll show some examples from the numbers here. In US, 2020, our light-duty vehicle sales were down 14.4%. So that's what happened last year with the US market in general. The only bigger manufacturer that increased their sales was Tesla, and their sales were up 20%. So that was a clear difference from the market there, showing that being an EV manufacturer, they actually can sell more than traditional manufacturers did. Tesla's market share from US EV sales were 66% last year. They increased their EV share, market share a lot last year. And if you look at overall, our EV sales were flat year to year in the US. That means that other manufacturers that kind of like lowered their efforts in the US market. And that's because other manufacturers had to put so much effort in the European market to figure out how they handle that, and they have limited production. So all of their efforts were going to the European market and Chinese market. So unfortunately, US became a sideshow on this side. So we were not getting the latest technology from other manufacturers, and that's what we are seeing. So Tesla is taking care of the market if others are not doing it. EV market share in Europe 2019 was 3.3%. It tripled last year to 10.2%. As you can see, the numbers grew, but also the market share grew really fast, even faster in that way. So that's a good indication when you bring right kind of vehicles to the market will respond well. EV models available in the US, theoretically we had 50 models, but in real life, not that many were available because manufacturers didn't stock them well. Right now in Minnesota, I think we have 15 vehicles, and I'll come back to that soon. But in Europe, we're talking about 170 different makes and models of EVs available. So that means that people have choices. They can choose the vehicles that they like, and that means that you can easily increase the sales. So that's what needs to happen in the US too. Germany, that is very traditional vehicle market. Even there in January, the market was already 22%. So that's very good sign. And of course, in Norway, 2020, that should say January 2021 for Germany, just to clarify that. In Norway last year, EV market share was 75%. So that's great. That's a really good sign. And in Europe, the manufacturers were talking 2 years ago that I don't know if these EVs will sell. We'll see. We don't see if there's demand and so forth. And now when they saw that they actually started selling really well, now they are saying that themselves, the European auto industry is saying that they expect that EV market share in Europe in 2025 is 40%. So they are seeing really rapid growth there, and it's pretty easy to see why. If you look at the light-duty market in the US and look at the market share by powertrain, right now gasoline is 89% of the market, diesel 3.7, hybrid 4.6, and then full electric and plug-in hybrids 2.7%. If we compare this to Germany, where they were in March, there the gas is less than 40%, diesel 22, and plug-in hybrids and full electrics are 22%, 22.5% of the market, as I said. So quite a bit different picture there already. And we look at Norway. Last month, their plug-in vehicle sales were 85% of the market. So it's almost total flip from what US market looks like when you compare to Norway. So they have shown where this thing is going, and it's very cool to see their developments with this. Some industry perspectives, what we have heard recently from industry. General Motors has announced that they will offer by 2025, they will offer 30 electric models globally, and 40% of the company's US models offered will be battery electric vehicles, so full electrics. And they have pledged to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles by 2035. They were the first big manufacturer to make this kind of pledge, and others have since moved forward too. Ford in Europe is saying that in Europe they are going to be 100% of their passenger vehicles will be zero emission capable. That means either full electric or plug-in hybrids by 2026, and by 2030 all electric. In Norway, they are, as a country, they are planning to phase out sales of new fossil fuel vehicles by 2025. And as we've seen, if they moved last year 75, now last month they were already 85, I think they can do this, which is very cool to see. Jaguar is also switching to all electric in 2025 already, so they are moving early here. And Volvo CEO Håkan Samuelsson said in January that I would be surprised if we wouldn't deliver only electric cars from 2030. And after that, they announced that yes, we actually are going to be delivering only electric cars starting 2030. And Deborah Wall, Chief Marketing Officer for GM, has said that there are moments in history when everything changes, inflection points. We believe such a point is upon us for the mass adoption of electric vehicles. So very good signs from industry. They are seeing this happening. They are seeing the market being ready. But it won't happen the same speed in all places, of course. So then the question back going to the demand, because that's what we manufacturers were saying in Europe. It turned out not to be an issue. They're saying the same thing now in US. It's like, is there really demand? I don't know. We'll see. Market is lukewarm to EVs. I don't think it's lukewarm. If we look at the study results, I've collected some of them. Already in 2018, AAA study said that 20% of Americans are saying that they're likely to buy an EV for their next car. That's 50 million people. Consumer Reports and Union of Concerned Scientists did a similar study in Minnesota in 2019, and they find that 30% of people are saying that they would consider buying or leasing one within the next 2 years. So that's cool. Consumer Reports did a new study in July 2020, so last year, and they said 71% of US drivers are say that they would consider buying one at some point in the future, with 31% indicating interest in EV for their next vehicle purchase. So again, about 30% there. JD Power announced one of their survey results in January, and they said 27% of US consumers express likelihood to purchase an EV in the next 4 years. So we are coming to the level of about 30% of the market of people saying, I would be interested in buying an EV as a next vehicle. If this is not demand, what is demand? I don't know. I really don't. So I find it always funny when people are saying, well, I don't know if there's demand. Yes, there is. You just need to provide the right product and do the right marketing, and you will have no problem selling it. If we compared it to European side of things, we can see a little higher numbers. 63% of UK drivers are considering EV for their next car, and Nissan study said 70% of European drivers say that they would consider buying an electric vehicle as their next car. And this is when you have gone over the inflection point there, when people are seeing that this is just better car. So why not go and do that? If we look at the US light-duty vehicle market here right now in different segments, just to give you an idea there, small cars, mid-sized cars, large cars, luxury cars, altogether about 20% of the market, little over 20%. So that's a car market. Then pickup trucks, 18.3. And you hear a lot of this, like pickup trucks and SUVs are the biggest portion of the market. No, not really, because crossovers are the biggest portion of the market. 45%. They're clearly the biggest portion of the market. This is true to Minnesota. This is a US numbers, but this is true to Minnesota too. We have a little higher pickup truck and SUV numbers here, but it's not considerably different. Crossovers are still the big thing. And if you think about pickup trucks, crossovers, and SUVs and vans are considered the larger vehicles, which is a little bit misleading because there are even some minis that are considered crossovers. So keep that in mind. And then if you think about it, if pickup trucks are less than 20% of the market, and people are always, if you ask for any of the dealers, do you have enough demand for pickup trucks? People are like, yeah, sure, no problem, pickup trucks, we sell them. Then you said, do you think there's a demand for EVs? And they said, I don't know. But if you think about it, 30% of the people are saying that they are interested in buying EV, and 18% of the people right now are buying pickup trucks. So maybe I haven't done the survey, but you could say that maybe there's actually a bigger demand for EVs than pickup trucks already right now. Who knows? But just to keep these things in mind and look at the different perspectives, and understanding that crossovers is the biggest market portion. Then what are the EV owners thinking when they drive electric? So different studies here. Fleet Karma, November 2020, 98% of battery electric owners are saying that the range of their EV is sufficient for their daily needs. 89% of European drivers say that switching to EV was the right decision. 91% of the EV owners are thinking to still keep their EVs. Only 1% is thinking to returning to fossil fuels, and 9% is not sure right now. So that's pretty good. Again, over 90% of people say yes, not going back. In JD Power's survey, they said 82% of the buyers said they definitely will consider purchasing another EV in the future. That's a definitely will. I don't know how many said most likely will, because they didn't have that in their basic information there. But again, very high numbers there. And Plug in America study said that 96% of EV owners report that they are likely to purchase an EV as their next vehicle. So as we can see, anyone who buys an electric car is like not going back. This is just a better car. And those of you who already drive electric know what we're talking about here. It's just a better experience overall. What has happened in Minnesota then? In September, if you are interested in following a little bit about what's happening in Minnesota, Department of Transportation has this excellent electric vehicle dashboard. So just Google M&D DOT electric vehicle dashboard, you can find this. And their September numbers were showing that we had at that point 14,500 EVs in Minnesota. There was a little glitch there. There were some models that actually were not EVs that they had removed then. So actually that number would have been a little under 14,000. But then if you look at what their numbers are now, in February, 18,750. So there's over 4,000 new EVs sold in this time period, or registration has increased. That's 30% increase. That's huge. That's a really big move in that time period. So I'm really happy to see these numbers, things moving forward. If we look at where the change has happened, so if you look at the September numbers here, we saw that we can see the Tesla being by far the biggest, a little over 5,000 vehicles sold, Chevy 2,700, Nissan 1,500 roughly, and then others a little less. Then if we look at numbers right now, Tesla moved from 5,000 to 7,500. So Tesla clearly sold most of those. Again, I said in 2020 they were 66% of the market. Clearly true here in Minnesota too, maybe even more so. Chevy also sold more, Nissan and others, but majority of the new EVs sold in Minnesota, Teslas. So I hope all of you know that we have this EV info list, so you can find all the information about vehicles that are available at the market here in Midwest, and also in the US. We have a separate list for US, but you can go to evinfolist.com and download that, and we just updated it last week, so it should be up to date. We do that once or twice a month because the model, there are so many changes to the models all the time. Vehicle availability at the dealers is unfortunately not much better than it was last time we spoke about this. As you can see, there are a lot of vehicles where a lot of makes and models that this vehicle availability shows 0. So if you look at the vehicles at Minnesota dealers, there's a good number of Audi e-trons. That's great. There's some BMW X3 X-Drives, which is great. Decent availability of vehicle Chevy Bolts, same with Chrysler Pacificas hybrids, and the new one is Ford Mustang Mach-e, which is a new vehicle just in the market. I'll talk more about it, but there's 32 of those right now at Minnesota dealers. And then the next big name coming to the market, Jeep Wrangler 4xe, is just coming to the market. Actually, most of those 100 vehicles that are listed here are in transit right now. They are not at the dealers, but some of the dealers might start to have a first ones coming, but we'll talk more about that soon. Mitsubishi Outlander, some good numbers. Again, White Bear Mitsubishi being best place to find those. Nissan Leaf, decent number. Same with the Porsche Taycan, good number of Porsche Taycans there. And again, Tesla availability has been pretty good. 3S, X, and Y. Yep, you should be able to find those. And another new one, Volkswagen ID4, just came to market. Dealers have at least demo cars there, and Volvo XC40 Recharge, another one. So in total, again, out of all the models we are supposed to have, we have about 15. And but the other number that is interesting here is that all light-duty vehicles at Minnesota dealers is now 33,000 or 34,000 roughly, and that usually has been over 40, sometimes almost 50. And here we are talking about the chip shortage that Anjali mentioned right now, that the manufacturers are slowing down their production because they can't get the electronics for the cars. So that's the one thing that affects to this right now. So vehicle availability is low right now on all cars, and that actually is increasing the prices, sale prices of the vehicles, both new and used. So just be aware of that when you think about the market. But if dealers don't have EVs on their lot, they're not selling any. That's very clear. They don't, and even if they have just a couple, they're not doing much about it. They are just selling it if someone comes and asks for it. They only advertise models that they have on the lots. If they don't have any, they're not advertising. So again, no surprise that no one knows that BMW 530e even exists, or Audi AL plug-in hybrid, that it even exists. Because if they don't have any, they're not advertising it. No EVs, no advertising, no demand, and then no practice. Dealers don't actually learn how to sell these well if they don't get to practice it by selling it. So that's it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy then. The cycle continues. You don't get good at selling them, you don't see any demand because you're not advertising, you don't get any cars. You're like, why just stick with selling the traditional ones? So that's a challenge we have with the dealers. At the same time, there are several dealers that are doing a good job, and I thought to just feature a few of them. First one I want to feature here is Roseau County Ford, which is in Roseau, Minnesota, and that is probably almost as far from Twin Cities as you can get. So very rural dealership. They have Ford Mustang Mach-es on their lot, and especially why we are featuring them here is that they were the only dealership in Minnesota that stood up and officially supported Clean Cars Minnesota rulemaking. So that's why if you or any of your friends are thinking about Mustang Mach-e, there's your dealership. They're great. They're really awesome. So check them out. The other dealer that I'm featuring here is GS Motors. That is in Hopkins, so here in Twin Cities, and they sell only used electric cars. That's the only thing they do. They have only used electric cars. So check out their website of the availability of their what they have in stock, and you can go there and test drive multiple different EVs. So if you think about you want to buy a used EV, they're a good place to go to. You can see, for example, there I just took that screen capture yesterday. 2015 Nissan Leaf for under 10,000. That's a pretty decent price for that mileage. So very good options available there. So we are expecting to see much more crossovers, SUVs, and pickup trucks. Over 80 of them probably before 2023. So that's that. EV is coming to the US market in 2021. Here's what we are kind of expecting to see. We know that Polestar will be available in Minnesota too, because they announced that there will be a Polestar dealership in Twin Cities, or I think they said Minneapolis. Anyways, so that's what we are expecting to see maybe sometime this summer. Audi e-tron GT is not available in US yet, but should be before the end of the year. Same with Lucid Air. And Mercedes just did a big event with EQS today, and they will be bringing that into US market in the fall. Now we have already received to the market the Volkswagen ID4, Ford Mustang Mach-e, Volvo XC40 Recharge, and then the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Those have just come to the market. So those are our new ones. Nissan Ariya Chevrolet EUV this fall for sure. Hyundai Ioniq, I hope we'll see it. I don't know if they have enough production that they'll bring any to the Midwest. Remains to be seen. That's always our challenge. And the same with the BMW iX, Audi Q4. Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, I would hope that we'll see that before the end of the year. Ford sells quite a bit of Escapes, and it'd be good to see the plug-in hybrid model already here. In Europe, they have sold more of those than comparable gas cars, so it has been selling really well there. Hyundai Tucson and Kia Sorento plug-in hybrids too. And the pickup truck side, GMC Hummer EV, Rivian R1T, most likely we'll see some of those before the end of the year, but Tesla Cybertruck, Ford F-150 electric probably will be pushed to next year. So that's the off market. So if you look at the market right now, best sellers in the market, Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, clearly the best sellers. As we saw, the Tesla sold most EVs in Minnesota by far, and these are the models that they sell the most. They starting less than 40,000, the Model 3, 38.5, and Model Y about 50,000. And they don't have federal tax credit anymore available because they have sold already over 200,000 vehicles. If the law changes and the incentives might come back, maybe we have some at the end of the year. I don't know yet, but that remains to be seen. But that's a federal tax credit. Range for these cars is between about 250 to 350, somewhere in between there, depending on which model you choose. And again, great acceleration, 3.3 to 5.3, just really good performance overall. And the Model Y also has towing capacity of 3,500 pounds. Jeep Wrangler 4xe is the new model. As I said, many of these are in transit right now to the dealers. This is probably not something that you think that someone who already has an EV is going to be buying because it's a shorter range plug-in hybrid. But this is really important for those who love Jeeps. If like, hey, I love Jeep, I drive Jeep, that's what I want. Well, now you have really an opportunity to get even better model available for you. So all-wheel drive, base price is 48,000 there. It gets 22 miles of electric range, total range being 370 miles. Level 2 charging rate 7.7 is very good, and it doesn't have a DC fast charging capability because it's a plug-in hybrid. Most of the plug-in hybrids don't have that. And goes from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. So it's pretty fast. It's one of the fastest Jeeps you can buy, and has a towing capacity of 3,500 pounds. So I did a little comparison here. I always tell people that no plug, no deal. Always do your research, figure out what are the vehicles available, make sure you buy the one with the plug because it's always the better deal. Especially when you take into account the total life cycle cost of fuel and all of that. But with many cases, I mean, you can hear from some entities saying, well, EVs are 10 to 15,000 more than traditional cars. That is just not true. That is just not true at all. And here's a good example. I did a comparison on Jeep's page, and truthfully, it's really hard to make the comparisons because you have to find exactly the same equipment for both cars, and other manufacturers don't necessarily make this very easy for the customers. But I spent quite a bit of time doing the comparisons, and actually Wrangler Sahara 4xe, that is the plug-in hybrid model, as I said, starts from 48,000. The comparable Wrangler is unlimited high altitude 4xe in an internal combustion engine, as an internal combustion engine vehicle. And the Sahara is better equipped, even better equipped than that one. There are a couple of points where that 4xe has more equipment than the other one does. And it's already almost $2,000 less of a purchase price. Then remember, you can get 7,500 tax credit for it. So then you can take back in tax time 7,500, and that effectively becomes a little over 40,000. Which one should you choose? There's just no comparison between these two. It's much better deal to get the 4xe, but again, most of the customers don't know this. So that's why always, if you are thinking about it, if you or any of your friends are thinking of buying a new car, say, okay, let's do a little research here. Let's see what it's really like. And if you do a full apples to apples comparison, you find pretty much in all cases that EVs are cheaper at the end of it. You can for sure buy Wrangler for, I think they start from 32,000, but it's not the same car. It's not comparable at all. And even in this case, the 4xe has much better acceleration, for example, than the traditional one. So, yep. Actually, no, in this case, the acceleration was pretty comparable. I'll take that back. But there were some other things there, but much cheaper to buy. And of course, all. Ford Mustang Mach-e, very important vehicle for Ford. They just brought this to the dealers. They have sold pretty well in the last couple of months with this one. seating 5. It can be purchased either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Ford has not sold the 200,000 units yet, so they still have 7,500 tax credit for it. So effectively, this becomes $35,000 vehicle after the tax credit if you can take advantage of it. Most of the people who are buying a new car of this price range have enough tax liability that they can take advantage of that. Electric range, depending on the model, 210 to 300 miles. Good level 2 charging rates of 11 kilowatts, and then very good DC fast charging rates also for 115 to 150 kilowatt power levels. And this one actually has a plug and charge system there. So when you go to a plug and charge enabled DC fast charging stations, you don't have to more than just plug the car in and it will start charging and do the billing automatically. You don't have to do anything with it. So that's where we are going. Tesla has had this functionality in their cars for a long time. Now it's coming to the other cars too, and Mustang Mach-E is one of the first ones getting that. Performance price, 3.5 to 6.5 seconds acceleration, excellent performance. So that's a very, very good car, and I've heard good things from people who have been doing extended test drives with Mach-E's. Here, if we do a comparison, you take a Mustang Mach-E compared to the traditional internal combustion engine one. Here, I didn't spend as much time doing a comparison because it was a little bit more complicated. They are not as clearly an apple-to-apple comparison. But again, if you think about this starting at 42,000, and then I looked at something in the middle of the pack of Mustang GT Fastback that would be somewhat comparable, probably. You take the 7,500 tax credit into account, and you're talking about the same price range. So again, very good example. There is not really a big price difference between these. Next vehicle that I will be talking about here is Volkswagen ID4. That is another one that we just got into Minnesota. Dealers have at least some demos of these, and you might, depending on what you want, you might have to order some, but you can call and test drive them already. I've heard extremely good things about this car. Extended test drives both in Europe and in US. People are liking it a lot. I like it a lot personally, and Volkswagen is doing a lot. They will be. They are right now the leading EV manufacturer from the traditional manufacturers. I would say they are really pushing forward hard. Volvo being the other one that is doing a lot. But I see Volkswagen bringing new models more in the affordable price range categories, which is great. So ID4 is the first of their models in US, available in rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. The base price for it, 40,000, but then you get the 7,500 tax credit for it. Price after the tax credit, 32,500. And right now, the model that is available has 82 kilowatt battery pack, so 250 miles of range with that one. Good charging speeds with that. This is not Mustang Mach-E fast in acceleration. This is 6.2 to 8.5, but still good acceleration. And if you take the towing package for it, it can tow 2,700 pounds. So I would definitely recommend going test driving this one too, if you're looking for a new vehicle. One of my friends just sent me an email today about this and asked about it. And they actually are showing this very clearly, that you're not comparing, they are not trying to sell this compared to the Tesla Model Y and trying to say, well, we have a competitor to Tesla Model Y or Tesla Killer or anything like that, or any other EVs. They are saying, hey, do a comparison between our Volkswagen ID4 to Subaru Forester, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, and see what you think. And here they exactly show that they are, when you take the 7,500 tax credit into account, you have a comparable pricing there. But then when you look at the different options, you can see that it's better equipped, which is usually true. with EVs. And then, of course, your driving costs are much, much lower. Your maintenance costs are lower, and it's a better driving experience. So again, no plug, no deal. That's why I keep talking about that. And then we have Volvo XC40 Recharge that is also available at Minnesota dealers right now. Both Portland Volvo and Klein Volvo, who are here dealers in Twin Cities, carry this, and very comparable there again to the previous vehicles there. Excellent acceleration with this one, 4.7 miles per hour. A little bit higher price with it, but good range and towing capacity of 3,300 pounds. So that's very, very good. So that was my market update and some information about the models that are here and models that are coming. And I'll next let Joe to continue here a little bit about Clean Cars Minnesota, and I'm sure we'll talk more after that about Q&A portion.
Yes, we're going to give you a quick Clean Cars update before we go into the Q&A. So I know we've got a lot of questions coming through, but I did want to put in a plug for Clean Cars Minnesota. You thought you heard the end of it, but it's still going. So I know some of you probably engaged in the process and submitted comments throughout the MPCA's formal rulemaking process that's been going on for quite a while, and it closed last month. Thousands of Minnesotans submitted comments in support of Clean Cars Minnesota and clean car standards for our state. And currently, the administrative law judge who has been assigned to the rulemaking process with the PCA is reviewing all of that. But there are still big oil and special interests at work against clean cars, and this time at the Minnesota legislature. So to summarize it, and there's more information at the URL on your screen, but there is a bill currently at the legislature that would strip the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's ability to protect Minnesotans from transportation emissions. And ultimately, this is some legislators working to undermine Clean Cars Minnesota, as well as the participation of those thousands of Minnesotans. So, like I said, because this is the issue that just will never come to a close, or we hope it will soon, but we're struggling to make it happen. We need to make sure that your legislator, even if you know that they are in support of clean cars and clean car standards, they still need to hear that the legislature should not take away a duty of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and that you support Clean Cars Minnesota. So if you go to that URL on your screen, there is a ton more info on the page that can provide a lot more context for the issue than I just did. I'll pop that into the chat box here in a little bit. And Jukka, maybe you can move us on to the next slide. Got a couple more events coming up. I guess you could say the band is back together. Jukka and I are doing more events this April, and we're going to be joined by Lisa Thurston from the American Lung Association. So I hope you'll be joining us for that. And then on Earth Day, we're having a special event with our partners at Energy News Network called Reckoning in Coal Country, where we talk about how communities in Wyoming and in Appalachia are navigating coal coming to an end, and how they're keeping their communities alive and vibrant in the new fossil-free future that we're all expecting. So again, hope you can join us for those events, just fresh-energy.org/events. And with that, Jukka, I think we're ready for the Q&A.
All
right. So if you stop sharing your screen, we can start right at the top. Perfect. Okay.
Good.
So first, I want to ask a question from Kathy. So Kathy is wondering if it's best to wait until federal legislation or state legislation moves forward before purchasing a new EV. She says they really want one now. My gut would say, like, take advantage of rebates while you can, or like the incentives, but what would you recommend someone who wants one now but wants to get the best deal?
Yeah, waiting game is always interesting. You can wait for the better new things and better incentives always. In some cases that might work. The other way to think about it, it's not that bad time to actually move to driving electric already. I have personally driven electric since 2013. Oh, I'm sorry, 2012, somewhere there. Quite many years, and we really enjoyed that, and you will enjoy too if you don't do it yet. What's the likelihood of things moving forward? We might get the federal tax credits changed. They might become rebates, but they actually might be lower then. So there's a risk on that too. We'll see. No one knows exactly how they will work. And if we think about, for example, Chevrolet, right now Chevy Bolts, the manufacturer actually has really good incentives in place. So, and there's like $3,000 Costco incentive too. So they actually have kind of compensated that. So there's not really that big of a need to change or wait for it. And Minnesota legislation, we have tried to push incentives, financial incentives for EV owners now like 4 years in a row. So far we haven't been successful. So I'm not holding my breath this year either. So I would say go test drive whatever cars you're considering, see what kind of deals you can get, and think about it. But I wouldn't necessarily think that waiting makes that much sense. At the same time, I'm not giving any financial advice to anyone. So don't come to me and say, Jukka said this. No, I didn't say anything.
So advice, but not advice. Thank you.
Exactly. That's how it is. I'm not very good at saying this. Sorry. I should be better better at, but anyways.
All right, well, I've got a question from Matthews. So Matthews says, how best does a new ZEV owner navigate the confusing charging ecosystem? He says he speaks to a bunch of different experts and has learned a lot, but there are still many layers of vendors, networks, and plans that are just super confusing. What is your recommendation?
Yeah, the basic thing there is that first of all, set up your home charging the way you want it. And that's your main place because over 85% of the charging happens at home. So that's the key piece for you. If you set up that well, you won't be using public charging that much. My wife, for example, has driven over 8 years with electric cars and she has never used public charging stations. So no problem there. I use it only if I do long trips, maybe once or twice a month. So depending on how you drive, it might not be much of an issue for at all. Level 2 charging is standardized for all cars so that the J1772 plug works for all cars. The only challenges we have are when we go into the DC fast charging, so the corridor charging when you're doing a long road trips. And there we still have 3 standard. We have Tesla, CHAdeMO, and CCS. Well, Tesla will continue to have their own standard for those. So that's one thing. And then we are clearly moving towards CCS because even Nissan, that was still in CHAdeMO camp, has moved into CCS with their new Ariya that is coming this fall. So it will simplify very soon here. There will be a different network provider, so that's I will give you that. That can be a bit complicated, but there's also light in that tunnel. It just gets better because when we get these plug and charge functions for the cars, it just gets easier and easier. So just get a car, drive, enjoy it, and hang in there if you have any challenges with those.
So Nick, to follow up on your comment about chargers, Nick has a question. He says, to set up a level 2 charger at home, is it best to work directly with Excel or just find an electrician and the right equipment? I know, Jukka, you're kind of a do-it-yourself kind of person, so you might have taken a different approach, but what would you tell a general audience?
I would tell the first, talk with your utility company, see what kind of programs they have in place, and see how much you need your own electrician in the process after all. Depends on what kind of a process it is. And also, utility companies don't have really a role that they would say you should do it this or that way. They have programs that you can choose from. They are there to provide you good advice on it, and they also have recommended electrician lists of electricians that have done a lot of EV charging infrastructure installations. So they can provide you good advice with that. So I always encourage talk with your local utility company first, but at the same time you can engage if you have a good electrician already. Start to talk with them how in your case that might work. And if you want to find your electric utility company, we have great resource for that. mncharging.org provides you direct links to all of the electric utility companies, their EV resources in Minnesota. So mncharging.org would be the link to use there, and we can probably pop that into the chat here too.
Absolutely, and I would add too that website has had a recent facelift and upgraded usability, as well as new sponsors. So it actually looks really awesome, is even more user-friendly than normal. So thank you, Jukka, for making sure that those resources are available to folks.
Yep, and if you like the design, that's from Joe. So
not all of it, but some of it. All right, let's go to a question from, and I do apologize if I pronounce your name wrong, Benaya. Europe, I believe, has decided to pull the plug on plug-in hybrids. Are you expecting, Jukka, something similar to happen here for plug-in hybrids in the US? Do we need to worry if we're looking to buy them?
no, I wouldn't worry about it. They definitely are a good choice for people, and it's just that in Europe the manufacturers have it can be manufacturing of plug-in hybrids can be a little bit more expensive because you still have internal combustion engine and electric drivetrain there, and therefore what manufacturers have seen in Europe is that European market is maturing in a way that people are like, well, I can actually get by with full electric. We have longer range. We can do that, no problem. So if the market is showing that people are ready to just embrace the full electrics, that's probably what the manufacturers are going to be doing. So that's why we are seeing the shift there. Our market is not that mature with EVs yet. So we will see more plug-in hybrids in the market. I wouldn't worry about it at all from that perspective. The only thing I would worry if I would buy a new traditional car is what's the resale value of that. Plug-in hybrids will still keep their resale value because they have the functionality of EV2 there. So not an issue in that way that I would be worried about. Just choose the cars that work best for your use case. For some, it's a full electric. For some, it's plug-in hybrid. As long as it has a plug, no problem.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jukka. So actually, I want to pivot now to a question from Grant. He says that they recently bought a used Chevy Bolt plug-in hybrid, and they are currently renters, although they do have a garage with an outlet. Are there any tax incentives or utility programs available for people in their situation?
Very good point. So if they are now, I'm assuming that we are talking about the charging infrastructure installation here, and there's a federal tax credit available for charging infrastructure installations, and it's 30% of the unit and installation cost, up to $1,000 for homeowners, and then up to $30,000 for commercial properties. And I'm just assuming because you have a garage and maybe you're renting a single family home, for example, then the homeowner could put the charging infrastructure in and take advantage of the tax credit. So maybe that makes it easier for them to provide you the charging capability there. And of course, you don't necessarily have to do much. You could even use the 120 outlet if you have available of that in your rental property, and do that with a plug-in hybrid like a Chevy Bolt. That might be enough for it. Just make sure that it's a high quality outlet and a good line there for that outlet.
Thank you, Jukka. And actually, so Lisa Thurston also just sent a note about Our Car's multifamily EV car sharing program. And it sounds like they are currently looking for sites in St. Paul and Minneapolis to install additional car sharing programming. So it looks like Lisa put in a link into the chat that everyone should be able to see to talk more about that and expand on that area of our car's really cool work.
Yeah, it's a good option for those who want to test drive EVs. You can do it with our car, and you can test drive if you can live without owning a car. That's another, of course, good thing there. So great options for people.
All right, Jukka, I've got a question from Kate that I know you're going to love because you love speculating on manufacturers. So
Okay.
why is Subaru such a laggard on EVs? Do they have anything on the horizon for the US marketplace?
Should I even open my mouth about this one? I'm not sure.
A loaded question.
This is very personal opinion about this one, but I'm happy to share my opinions too. Subaru is one of the biggest greenwashing companies in automotive industry overall. They built this nice green image of themselves. We are like, yeah, go to the nature, drive Subaru, and their cars are not very good at all from that perspective. So and they have been doing this for years and years and years. So I always do my best to talk my friends and relatives out of buying Subaru because of how they just act. Anyways, they have a Subaru Outback plug-in hybrid. They call it hybrid, but it's actually a plug-in hybrid that provides about 20 miles of EV range. Let me pull my numbers here. I don't remember this, so I'm using, surprise, surprise, our EV info list here because it is available in some states, unfortunately not in Minnesota. So it's called Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid, and it gets 17 miles of electric range, and it's only available in select, like they say, in select markets and in select dealers. So yeah, unfortunately not in Minnesota. Sooner or later they have to change, and I hope it happens very soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Jukka. And I hit pause on the recording, so we don't have you on the record for your honest opinion with Subaru.
Okay.
Just kidding. I didn't. It'll be live.
Yeah, that's.
So Nancy has a question, and she sent this one in when you had like your grid up of like makes and models coming to the marketplace over the years. So Nancy points out that are most of the new cars coming to market larger because of the crossover and also like some of the pickups and whatnot, but also more expensive. So it looked kind of like cars are getting big, EVs specifically are getting bigger and more expensive in the coming years.
Yeah, I don't know if they're getting much more expensive. Of course, if you have a much larger vehicles, then yes. But most of the new vehicles are coming into crossover sector. Like we showed in 2021, majority of the vehicles that are coming to the market are in that crossover section, and those are the ones that are bought most. 45% of the market. They might be bit more expensive than some of the traditional sedans, but there's not a huge difference. They are not like big SUVs that can be very expensive, but these usually are decently priced, and also size-wise they sit higher and may be bit bigger, but not hugely bigger. The cool thing about the electric cars when you look at them is that you don't have to design them the same way as traditional vehicles. You can use the space much better. You can put you don't have to play with the internal combustion engine setups. You can do things differently. So you can actually, in many of these, the wheels are all the way in the corners. You actually have a better driving capability, even though the car itself might not be that much bigger. So they have many advantages from that perspective too.
Thank you. All right, a question from Ben, who is writing us from Lanesboro. So he says, I am also a Volt owner, purchased a used 2015 model, which was as close as he could get to an EV in his relatively remote area out in Lanesboro. So what would you guess would be its near future trade-in or resale value for when he's able to go with a BEV?
2015?
Mm-hmm.
I have not followed the market that well that I could say directly, but I know that that era, because that's the first generation Volts, we are talking about $8,000 to $12,000 price range, I think, for those. That's what I've been seeing, but I haven't followed the market closer, so I couldn't give a better estimate than that. But yeah, that's where I think we are right now, roughly.
Okay. All right, another question from Kathy. Can you talk about the crash safety data of gas cars versus EVs? And now I know this is really specific to the automaker and like the models, but is there anything you can say generally about this?
In generally, EVs have really good crash test ratings. Institute for Highway Safety is the one entity that does most of the crash testing in the US, and they have given all the vehicles that are available, all the EVs that are available in Minnesota, their highest rating, the good rating that they call it. So they are very, very safe. Not any issues with that.
All right. Well, Jukka, it is 5:36. So we have been talking for over an hour and we covered a lot of different questions. Is there anything that you expected to get asked and didn't, or any last things you want to like throw in the mix before we get going with the evening?
We can spend several hours talking more. That's not an issue. So you don't necessarily want to give me an open floor in that way. But it's great to talk with these folks about the market and seeing it is, and I'm really looking forward what we can talk about next quarter here if we do that. And definitely join us next week for it's on Tuesday evening. We have the clean air lawn care. You keep on changing the name every time.
You came up with that one.
I know, but still, we should just stick with the same name. It's easier. But we'll have a really good time talking about how you can electrify your lawn equipment, because that's very important. Those things are traditional internal combustion engine ones are extremely polluting, extremely bad, and there are really good battery, especially the battery powered models now available, and we'll cover everything from the impacts to what kind of units there are, and you can find all the information. American Lung Association has 6 pages of just the battery electric lawnmower information for you if you join it. So that's definitely a next good webinar to join. And then of course our EV owners panel on 29th.
Which is always fun because we're in a bunch of different people's garage hearing their opinions about the cars they drive and why they drive them. So yeah, mark your calendar and join us for that. I'll send out an email after this event, probably tomorrow morning, if I'm being honest, with a link to the YouTube video of the recording so you can share this with your network, and also links to the upcoming events. And Jukka, if we do decide to do this quarterly, you're going to be in Finland when we do it next. So you just put yourself on the hook for.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll give you guys a treat, because I'm going to Finland this summer, since that's where I'm from originally. So I do my summer vacation trip to Finland. I'm getting vaccinated here, so I'm ready for that. But I was just able this week. I want to share this. I was able to reserve a Volkswagen ID4 full electric car for my summer vacation there, and they have this rental that you can rent it for a month, and it was very affordable, and I was like, great, so I'll get to drive ID4 there around Finland, so why not? We could do something like this.
You're gonna let your kids drive it, right?
Sure, yeah.
All right, well, we'll check back then. For those of you who want to join us next week, please do. We'll talk all about lawn care. And then the week after that, we'll talk with other EV owners. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.